Well, we have our next guest on. It's Victoria. And let me see, I'm probably get your last name wrong. Is it Peltier?
LTA, pretty close.
Peltier. Oh, okay. I was very close. I have a friend named Dan Peltier. So that's what I looked at. I was like, it's very close to his last name. But Victoria, thank you for joining us. How has I guess, where are we in? Spring now? I guess that's the time of year. Yeah, I guess we can say that. Spring-ish. So it feels like summer because global warming is a thing, unlike some people who don't believe it is. How has it been for you so far?
Not too bad, although I choose to escape the snow. So I now live in South Florida. So for me, it is pretty warm and sunny most of the year. So this is one of my favorite times because it's not so like oppressively hot and humid.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good. Yeah, I used to live in Florida years ago, in Orlando, and literally I came from California and then I lived in New York. But New York's kind of humid. Obviously, you have all four seasons, but I remember going down there for the first time, probably late summer, probably like August, and I just thought I was going to die. And I had to realize, like, I'm taking 2 showers. Why is it so humid? I don't get this. I was working at a theme park outside, and I'm just like, this is the epitome of hell. But also, maybe one of the greatest experiences I probably had. So I don't know how you look at it. I don't know how you look at it either way, but it was, trying times and learning how you have to put visors in your windows, when you park your car outside, and leaving it out in the sun. And I had a leather car. So, yeah, I had some growing pains. I had to learn through that.
That's right.
Well, yeah, it's great here in New York City. We had our first nice day in a very long time. So luckily now today I think it's like 80 degrees, which is interesting for this time of year.
Yeah.
I was taking advantage of it, and then it drops back to like 50 degrees tomorrow. How people don't get sick, I have no clue. But
I hear you. Well, I moved here from New York, although I originally hail from Canada, Toronto.
Well, that's a different level.
So I know cold. I know 4 seasons. I actually do enjoy having 4 seasons. I could do with a really, really, really short winter one, but the fall in New York is incredible. I love it.
Yeah, it is actually a really great time that we have, but it's been blending a little bit. So it's been like kind of, I'd call like the summer falls, which has been like really hot. So hopefully we get a nice one this year when like that comes along. But spring so far has been pretty good. Well, Victoria, let us know a little more about yourself. Let us know who you are. What's your elevator pitch? How would you explain Victoria?
Well, Victoria is a multi-potentialite, which means I have a wide variety of diverse interests. But the best way to summarize Victoria, as you said, elevator pitch. So I'm a 20 plus year corporate executive, primarily B2B professional services.
Mm-hmm.
I have also built and bought businesses and been a part of what feels like a cajillion mergers and acquisitions. It's really around 40 for myself, for the companies I work for the clients I've supported. So I am very good with change.
Wow.
Sit on multiple boards. I am an author. I'm a professional public speaker. Married 2 now adult kids, which makes me feel really old. But I got a fur baby to round out the house now that I'm an empty nester. Fitness fanatic, foodie, wine lover. There you go. There's me.
Sounds like all great things. Amazing. And you said you were in New York. Did you grow up in New York? Did you grow up in the Northeast? Or you said Toronto as well too, right?
I lived in a few cities across Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen and a U.S. permanent resident. Yeah. You'll only know that your listeners will probably only hear the Canadian in me when I say 2 words: out and about. Those are the 2 I have.
That's the main ones. That's the main ones people think about. Yeah.
But so no, I grew up in, born in Ottawa, grew up in Western Canada and Calgary, and then got relocated right out of college to Toronto. So Toronto's been like the most home, but I've been between Toronto and New York for the last 20 years, and then moved here almost 3 years ago to Miami.
Wow. And that is definitely, we talked earlier, a different change in temperature for you going through. How are you liking Miami? Obviously, you've been there a little bit of time. What has been like kind of the highlights and what you love about it?
I was gonna say love hate.
That sounds
In,
right. That's Florida.
uh,
Yep, that's right.
so, I mean, I love no state income tax, particularly given
Mm,
that I lived right in Manhattan and paid city tax as well. So,
God,
um,
it's so ridiculous, honestly.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that is a draw. The I do love like snow, and my husband like hates the cold, even though he comes from an even colder part of Canada.
Oh, wow.
But he's always like, gone south, so he loves it. So I love that. We have an amazing group of friends. Miami and Miami Beach, where I am too, is specifically is like a bubble for the rest
Hmm.
of Florida. The parts I hate is the summers here are brutal. And I could do less, and we don't need to have a political conversation, but I don't love the Florida politics nor our governor. So
Yeah,
I'm,
I think
uh,
half the nation agrees with you on that one. So yeah, I think you're fine. Yeah.
good.
Okay. Well, okay. Those are some good things. Yeah. I've only been to Miami, I think maybe only once in my lifetime. Um, Crazy enough. Well, I was in Orlando, but you seem they're all close, but they're not that close. Well, I guess they're kind of close, but I went for a birthday trip and I don't remember much of it, but it was a great time. So it was fun.
That's another part I don't like. I almost didn't want to come here because like vision I have was like the spring breakers who come here and it's
Oh
crazy,
man.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not me. I've never been really like a party girl. So
Yeah.
I could do a little less of that, but we just try and like stay away from that part of the beach
Hmm.
when
Oh, I can
spring
believe
break.
it. Yeah. And did they like try to ban them or like change things recently so that they
They
couldn't
did
come
this
like
year. This
tourists?
year was
Yeah.
very different. So there were
Wow.
curfews. You couldn't park on the street unless you were a resident or you worked here. Now it was tough for businesses. Actually, I think they almost went to the extreme
Mm.
just because they had
Oh
to
wow.
shut down by midnight. Like there were, a bunch of things. But so it was good for residents. But I think it was I think it probably swung too far the other way this year.
Yeah. I know as I gotten older, I realized the party scene is not as fun as it used to be. But I think now I'm such an old person where I just want to have some wine and some cheese and just like hang on a rooftop and just sip on like
I hear
anything
you.
and then call it a shot by like 10 p.m. Be like, all right, I'm done. Good night. But I still have those nights I go out pretty late. But I think as you get older, you just kind of like, I've done it. I've been there. It's fine. But now it's really about, as we get into our next topic, it's really about like travels. And so me and my partner have been traveling. Well, okay, he lives over in Scotland, but ideally, whenever we travel, it's always been new cities together. But it's sad because he has traveled all over the world. And so I feel like a numbnuts. And I'm like, yeah, I've been everywhere in the States. But then he's like, I've been to Greece. I've been to Thailand. I'm like, where have you not been? Like how are we gonna like have this work if you've been to every freaking city around the world? But ideally, we have learned to kind of travel and go different places that we've not both been to, or somewhere he has been, and he's probably not been to certain parts or probably experience.
Yeah.
So I was looking at trips and itineraries this summer, and we're going to go to Spain, which I'm very excited about. But I'm also nervous because I know it gets very hot in Europe. And when I was there in September, I learned that in certain parts of Europe, air conditioning is not a thing.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
right.
And so I went to much of these, like, great. We were in Amsterdam, I think it was September, which I like to gloat. Global warming is a thing. It is my stance I'm on. And it's like, we went there, beautiful city, amazing. But everyone was sitting outside. And I just didn't understand it. I'm still learning. And I'm like, guys, why is everybody sitting outside? We walked to the bar. I could not, Victoria, like, it was like a furnace of what you probably feel in Florida, but like trying to sit inside. And I was like, great establishment, but I'm like, I see where everyone sits outside now.
Yeah.
This is a thing.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy how hot it was. Even some of the people, locals I was talking to, are like, yeah, it hasn't been this hot in a long time. And so it's like, I'm hoping that doesn't happen when we go to Spain, but I'm also going to prepare myself as well, just in case. But
Yes.
I'm looking forward to the art and the history of it. Because one of the things I think I take from travel is that you're always trying to learn something and you're trying to really expand your horizons. And I think we can all do a great deal of doing that in our lives. It also gets bad because you build a travel reputation. So now I am known to never be home. So someone's always guessing where in the world I am at one point or another. And when sometimes I'm like, I know I like being at home. I really do. I love New York. I do. But, just something about, taking quick trips here and there, just kind of explore stuff. And working in corporate America kind of allows you that kind of luxury if you do have that kind of job where you have a lot of vacation, you can work remotely now. And I had such a luxury during my job, so I could pretty much work anywhere our office is, that we have around the world. So I figured why not take a chance to learn something new and learn a different culture and expand their horizons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always a rich thing. People say, oh, it's rich. Well, I'm not flying a private jet around the world. I'm still doing commercial, but it's different levels of travel. And I think people can learn that you can travel and still make it a budget thing and also still make it, not hit your pocketbook so heavy and still make it a great experience, regardless of how you do it,
Yeah.
but people always get to do one way or another. But I'm always like, no, this travel comes in many forms,
Yeah.
you have to make it your own. That's the most important part.
Agreed. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, although I was just having this conversation with my younger son the other day, who I think is a little entitled, and so we're having a conversation around travel. Who has yet to secure a job and wants me to pay for some
Hmm.
stuff, and I was like, well, let's and I was like, let's be clear, I didn't really take my first vacation until I think I was 30. I could have done it sooner, but I became an
Yeah.
executive young at the same time as I was having my children, and so that was a choice rather than a cost or ability standpoint. Although I grew up with no money, my parents, so no vacations, and so I needed to
Right.
remind him a little bit of this. And so, although I want them to see and experience the world, and as you
Yeah, of
said,
course.
the different cultures and history. I mean, you think of we're nothing here in North America when you look at Europe and other parts of
Oh
the
yeah.
world, right? So, so I want them to have that experience. I just want them to appreciate it a
Yeah.
little bit more, and
Just put them in a
not all
hostel.
on mom's dime.
Yeah, just put them in a hostel. He'll be all right. Just
That's right.
this nice, safe hostels. Unfortunately, I mean, I guess we have some here, but I had the conversation with my nephew too, and he just turned 22 now. Jesus, I'm old. And he was saying the same thing. He's like, "Oh, I'd love to go here. I want to do this." I'm like, "You can." I said, "But listen, it's going to be different levels of doing it. And granted, it's going to change your experience, but also you're going to have something rewarding and learn from it at the same time." So, if anything, you look at it, this all stepping stones. Have I always stayed at 4-star hotels? No. Did we have some hiccups and perfectly stayed? Yeah. But you know what? That adds to memories. So if anything, you learn something from every single one. Because
Yeah.
that Airbnb we had in Amsterdam on the 4th floor with no AC was an experience. Regardless of how you look at it, beautiful location, sure, amazing. Narrow stairways, 4 stories up with luggage, will always be an experience I'll have.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you take it. Do you guys have any trips planned for you guys this spring? I guess summer. I guess summer is usually a big travel time for people.
We did quite a bit last year, and I'm currently in career transition, so I'm going to try and be good and not spending much money until I land elsewhere. But we did a lot last year. I have made up for not doing a ton of travel, although actually I've traveled extensively for my work, and it's
Yeah.
taken me many great places around the world. But we did a cruise out of Barcelona last year. That was actually
Ooh,
probably one of my most favorite trips.
nice.
And so we went, so Barcelona to into France, which we'd been many times, so that wasn't as exciting. But Palma de Mallorca, Ibiza,
Yeah.
so that one was pretty good. And we had done Paris again, although because we love it there and go many times, so we had done that for our anniversary last year.
Beautiful.
So we'll see. Nothing planned now, but that can change very quickly.
That can change. Now, do you think it's a difference? And obviously, it's a huge difference. But work travel versus leisure travel. Do you feel like you have enough of time to really take in certain aspects when you have a work business trip versus a leisure trip? No, you don't.
No. I mean, I just wanted to get home to my family when I was doing it many years ago, and so
Mhm.
the days I would get up at 6 a.m., even try and get home same night if I could, or just
Yeah.
minimize the number of nights that I was away. And really, it was from the airport to the hotel to the office and back, and repeat, and
Yeah.
that was it. So, and although as I got older and my kids were older, I did try and tag on. And so they've got, I don't know if you've heard the phrase bleisure, business
Mm.
and
Leisure.
leisure
Leisure. Okay.
travel being combined. So I have tried that over the last number of years. And so my husband's come with on some of those, or just tag on, come at the end of the trip, so we could just, add a weekend on,
Have
that
some
kind of thing.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's kind of smart. Yeah, I look at some of my executives when they travel, and I'm just like, I don't know how you see your wife. I mean, I understand it's hard because you want to be obviously be best and do your job and spread a lot of things. And we work in private equity, which is just always busy, and capital marketing. So, but it's just like I look at those things, I think about that, and I don't have that same situation, but I always know, regardless, business travel is always heavy and it's a lot. And yeah, when you have families, I think it always takes a toll. My parents never really traveled. I mean, my mom did a little bit for work, but not a lot. My dad was pretty much a, blue collar worker. But like, I see some of these kids today, and I look at my sisters and this and that. And it's like, you're never home with the kids. So I know that has to take some kind of internal guilt as a parent to go through that. But at the same time, you want to build your career, which, we'll go into that a little bit, talking about that in your experience. But ideally, yeah, I mean, that's got to be kind of hard, especially as a woman in the industry in corporate America, to be like, you're not shamed, but also it's like, it's just a heavy toll to take, versus what a man will go through in that same role. I mean, how has that really been for you with your kids? I mean, obviously they're older now, but, during the career, they were younger. You were missing probably so many key milestones, as a parent.
Yeah.
Like, how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I think I had enough guilt, and then sometimes I found other people tried to lay more on me for some of those
Mm,
decisions. So I
yeah.
had my children young by choice,
Hmm.
and very much so. So I was married to a woman previously, and I gave birth to our children while we were together. So when I say by
Yeah.
choice, clearly that is a very deliberate
Yeah.
situation.
With choice. Yeah.
Um, so I gave birth to my first son uh, just before I turned 24. And a few months after he was born, I stepped into my first executive role. And so
Wow.
I'm very fortunate to have had a partner in my ex-wife and now my husband now, who've been super supportive of my career. And but some of it has been about choice for sure. I think of when my younger son, born female, transitioned to male. So you might hear me
Hmm.
say she, her pronouns, just when she was identifying as a girl. Um,
Right.
and so I think of when my kids were 6 and 2, and Jordan, my youngest, was like, really engaging in speech. And I would come home on the weekends and I had missed things that she had done, during like the week, and speaking full sentences.
Mm,
And I spent that year, actually, I just know for tax purposes, I had it, my assistant had captured it. I spent 220 days on the road. That's how many
220
business days
days.
there are. But also meant I didn't take any vacation, but we were going through lots of mergers and acquisitions, and there was just, yeah. But that was my
Right.
choice. But then I think about when my ex-wife passed away a little over 10 years ago, my
Mm,
kids were 23, were 13 and 9 at the
wow.
time. And so
Yeah.
then I left a job I loved because it had me on the road still traveling quite a bit, like probably about
Yeah.
80%. And that wasn't going to be sustainable. I was single at the time. I met my husband shortly after she passed, but although we were divorced at the time. And so I left a job that I really, really enjoyed to shift to one that wasn't maybe quite as exciting, but it came with like 10% travel.
Yeah.
And that was the right choice at that time. So I think there's compromises and trade-offs you have to make.
Yeah.
And when I talk to other, particularly women, I'm not going to say it's only the women that bear this kind of significant child-rearing duties, but it much of the time it is.
Predominantly. Yeah.
Again, around like, I have enough guilt. Like, so don't let anyone make me feel guilty. When I went back to work very quickly after having Jordan, that was my
Hmm.
choice. And
Yep.
people were like, what are you doing? And like really laying on the guilt hard. I'm like, my wife's at home. We have a nanny. Like we're all good. It's all good.
Right. Right. No, that's good. And you found that balance. And you're totally right. Nowadays, we have paternity leave. Like the fathers feel the same exact way. And I love companies that really give people like trying a chance for both parents to really kind of be there and do that. But I think at some point, it's always tough because when you think about having your family, and when people think about having families, and studies have shown people have had families a lot later in life now than normally what it was before. And I think at some point, depending on where you are in your career, you're trying to build a career, but you're always thinking about a family. And I think those two can work cohesively very well, but I think it comes with a good balancing act and good management skills to be able to do that. But what advice would you give any young executive looking out here to learn to kind of balance themselves and learn to, like, the corporate ladder is away, it's there, but how to really just take time to really, what's the word I like to say, work-life balance, to be able to kind of balance both. Like, what kind of good advice would you give someone? Because we were always just so hard-hitting when we come out. You got out of college and it's like, all right, I got to do this. I got to hit this. I got to do this. I got to go to this person. I got to go network this person. I got to make this happen. And ideally, sometimes you got to just kind of take it in and really have a path, but just learn to balance it. So, like, what would you tell someone in that position who's just starting off in the crazy world of corporate America today?
Well, my choice of words is more around work-life integration. So for me,
Ooh,
it's all just life.
okay.
And
Right.
so I like attempting to compartmentalize it. I don't think
Mhm.
works well. I mean, particularly now as we work out of our homes post COVID, and many
Yeah.
environments are still hybrid, or some are still fully remote. And so the ability to separate has become more difficult. So don't. Uh, and so for me, it's
Okay.
like, how do you find that right place of integration? And so for me, I've had this saying with my team for a long time, well before COVID. There are no
Mhm.
schedules. There are just deliverables. And in
Mm.
doing so, it means, like, you don't need to ask me permission to leave early to go to a doctor's appointment or take a child or a parent, to something at all.
Right.
Like, we have commitments to our clients, to one another, and, like, so just honor those deliverables. And if that means and also, like, personality styles. I'm an early morning person. And
Mhm.
so I
Yeah.
get up, I go to the gym. It's part of the reason I'm not a party girl and like to be in bed early too. Uh, and
Mhm.
I'm best working until a certain point. Don't ever make me work like super late hours. I can't do that. So I'm best at that point. But then when my children were younger, like, I always tried to make it home for dinner, so we could
Yeah.
sit together as a family. And then once the
Yeah.
kids went to bed, then I hop back on again. And so my advice would be, like, find what works well for you. Uh,
Mm.
and do gain some confidence in figuring out what the balance and integration looks like.
Yeah.
I've worked 60 to 80 hours a week most of my career, and that's been my choice. And I don't,
Yep.
and certainly I'm finding newer generations don't want that and want more time to do different things. Um, so find out what brings you joy. Harder when you're newer in your career to do what I'm going to say next. The things that don't bring me personal or professional joy or value, I say no to. I delegate or I outsource. And again, earlier in
Mm.
your career, when you're the person getting delegated to, I get it. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging,
It's hard.
um,
Right.
but but have that conversation with your leader. Like, I'll tell people, like, manage my expectations. When I say there's no schedules, just deliverables. If they're too great, the timelines we ultimately have for our clients, like, let's have a conversation around that. I'd rather someone sort of push back. And then the last thing would be just doing um, what is connected to, like, purpose and passion. And as I said, I use the word joy, brings you joy. Then it just never feels like work.
Yeah. I think that's so great that you mentioned that, and that's a lot of what I've been trying to redo myself. Because ideally, I had to reinvent my career multiple times after leaving the Walt Disney Company, because I felt that did not, I didn't, not that I didn't believe in the company's mission, I didn't believe in what it brought to the table, and I've been in entertainment all my life for a good chunk of my career. I don't like how people are treated in the process, and that's not to talk bad about any company, but it's just the fact of, like, you see so much and you think you're supposed to just kind of be mundane, just as one thing. But ideally, you have the power to kind of change and take things to the next level, or find a trajectory that really works for you and push yourself. For me, as I went back to school and I got another degree, and people was like, "Oh, why did you waste more money doing that?" Yeah, you can look at it that way, but ideally, the information I gained and me going back to school and doing that has helped me further down the road of where I want to be. So it helped me more with my marketing skills, helped me more with sales, taught me more with just communication in general, which is a huge part of corporate American jobs. Like, it's learn how to communicate. Because you'd be very shocked that some people cannot write stuff in the email, and you just sit there and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I've had to sit back and be like, okay, you did go to grammar school, right? Or you did go to school, like, how to talk. And we understand there's a corporate lingo and different ways of saying, we emerge, and it just sounds like crap. But then you have to learn that, like you said, you have to kind of find a way what you can and can't do, and know what's the best practice for you. So I like the fact you said, like, in integrating, because, like, my job now, and this has been a long time coming, is where it's a job where it's like they appreciate you as a person, which is number one. I think if your job is not appreciating you, that should be an automatic red flag to you. And I know you can make a lot of money, you can bring in big bucks, you can be doing amazing things. And I get that. Maybe you have other responsibilities, and I understand that. But if a job is not treating you well, or not even acknowledging any of the work you've done, no matter how big it is or how small it is, that to me is just always a red flag. And it's the first time where I felt in a job that I've had where it's like you actually are appreciated and your ideas are actually taken into consideration. All your ideas are not going to be grand slams out of the park. No, but the fact that they take the initiative to even want to listen to hear what you have to say, that should always be a good thing. And that should be a good sign of a company you work for, because that makes you feel validated as a person. That makes you feel validated as a worker here. It makes you feel that you are somehow contributing to some of the things that are happening at the job. And once again, you're not making big changes in everything you do, but the small things you do are a change for someone else. I think the projects I work on, it helps my higher ups do their job better and get somewhere where they need to be. And in return, they're very grateful about that and they're very appreciative for that. And I think that's what we really have to work for when we look at these jobs, because a lot of times, and a lot of young people are starting to see this now, and not a generational gap, and I want to look at the generations differently, but they want to, what I'd say, you want to work smarter, not harder. And I think they're starting to understand that nowadays, which you've probably seen over your years being at every company you've been at. It's starting to see a kind of shift in that level. And it's not about hard work. I don't mind working. I just want to make sure what I'm working on makes sense. And I'm not just doing it to just be, yeah, I get a paycheck and I'm doing it. But it's like, but do we really need to take this call for another hour? Do we need to be on this project for another 4.5 hours? Like, it's the smartness of it. You try to think about like what efficiently makes sense. And efficiency is something I've thought was something you would think happens in corporate America all the time. And you'd be very surprised how it does not sometimes. And you just look back and you're like, what? You're a multi-billion-dollar company. You can't seem to figure out how to do a simple process of, it's just mind-boggling every time. Which I think is great,
Well, you'd be amazed. I mean, at some of these companies, as you said, the amount of waste of time and effort on things. So I've always been pretty like outspoken and vocal. So I try and improve the processes and situation wherever I'm at.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing. I think you have to be comfortable to stand up. Not to don't horn my own podcast, but you have to be a little uncomfortable to be comfortable in a way, because I think if you don't take necessary steps, you're just kind of a repeated pattern, which, probably you can maybe speak to this when you get a level of leadership. I think leadership is very scary. I stepped in one of my leadership roles for the first time on a small project, nothing big. And I was terrified. I tell you, Victoria, when I had to work with a bunch of women, and I'm not saying this in a sexist man way, but ideally there's a lot of personalities that comes in. And I grew up with sisters, so I should know this. But ideally, it's like you kind of sit in this room, and I honestly felt like I was Andy Cohen sitting on like the reunion of the Housewives, and just hearing these girls bicker all day. And I'm like, and we're professional, but you can see the tension, and yet you have to take on all this different aspects of like ideas. How someone approaches this. You have to be sensitive to someone else's understanding. This could be for men as well too, because God knows men could be big babies. But it's just like you have to understand the level that went into it. And I was terrified because I didn't want to A, offend anyone. B, I want to make sure we got the project done. C, how do I incorporate some of the background I have so that I can really share this wealth of knowledge with everyone else on the team? And also let's work together in a good synergy, which sometimes you just think is so easy. You're like, great, we come together, we got this. And you realize it is not like that. It is not all peaches and it's just not easy. Yeah. So ideally, maybe I might be asking you for help on this, but ideally when it comes to leadership, how do you really incorporate kind of that level of building that team, that leadership, that work skills, and really to stay on top of being a good leader and not a boss? Because I feel like there's a strong difference between a boss and a leader. But I'd love to hear your side of it and how you feel about it.
Yeah, I refer to it as whole human leadership. In fact, I wrote a book on it coming out at some point this summer.
Mm,
Um, and I think early on, I made some mistakes in leadership, and I think because I was an executive for at such a young age, I was the only woman, I was the only queer person. Like I feel like had to wear a mask all the time, and so I was like
yeah.
uber focused on business, like all business
Yeah.
all the time. I certainly wasn't talking about emotions or showing any vulnerability, and so I think I was too much perceived as too much of a hard ass. But the reality is, like, perception is reality. So for me, I had to
Yeah.
shift. And what that meant is, and I've always been very, very focused on like diversity and inclusion and creating like places where people feel like they belong. But it's
Hmm.
that and learning how to, you talked about communication earlier and how important that is, like how to communicate
Yeah.
really differently with people, like the how you listen, and but even the questions that you ask. And so for me, it's also been about building trust with my team, and that
Mm,
means um, vulnerability is really key. Being
yeah.
authentic and being very transparent, sharing as much as I can about why we make what the plans are, why we're making some of these decisions, to give people some comfort and some confidence, and even just in their own safety and their role of what does some of this change mean. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. But it doesn't mean that we're not still strong um, leaders of performance. It doesn't mean that we can't have tough conversations when we need to, but we've built
Right.
up trust and rapport so that when we have to have that, it's received in a much better way. And we're also committed to one another's success. Um, the other thing I'd say, though, is I think it's really important to recognize that we're all leaders, regardless of hierarchy or title. And so I think
Mm,
we have the opportunity to, demonstrate that, for your listeners who might not have the title, but
right.
recognize I do think our voices are power. And so, and how you choose to engage that in business. So for the aspiring leaders as well, like show up, use your voice now, but then
Hmm.
show up authentically, transparently, building, truly trusted relationships from a place of care and compassion, and not like just this transactional environment. That's when it, I think, goes sideways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I've seen that happen multiple times. I think as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, I've learned to listen. I've learned to really question things, but also by questioning is not to say that it's question is, oh, you're stupid or oh, this is dumb. It's more of like, but how can we make it better? Or if this is the process we do this, why do we do this process? I feel like when you have a wealth of knowledge to really help you understand certain processes and things you do, you have a better appreciation for it. And I think you have a better understanding of where it goes and where it makes sense. And then you can really look at, what am I really doing? What am I really making for myself to be here? If you have a hierarchy you want to go on, I always tell people there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you always want to achieve your best. And as you said, if you don't have the title role, but if you know inside yourself you have that leadership skill set, volunteer for something. It's okay to volunteer for projects. It's okay to volunteer for local drives and different things. One of the things I think my company now, or the one I'm with currently, they have so many great projects and so many things they work with. One of them was, I forgot the name of it, but we did one where we would partner with younger school generations to talk about the importance of finance, because
Mm.
a lot of people in the inner city and different aspects don't really understand the importance of credit, doesn't understand how to balance a checkbook. And these are things that we're sending our kids out into the world and they have no idea. And you're like, you would think you learned how to do this, but you'd be very shocked how you don't,
Yeah,
you
that's right.
know. And so we had to take the chance, and they were a little younger, but I do that think there's no wrong time to teach that to your kids. And it doesn't have to be a whole complex book on percentages and interest rates and the housing market, no, but it's the simple things you just want to teach them to look out for and understand, and realize how important it is to affect your life and how it's going to affect your trajectory on where you want to go or what you want to build for yourself down the road.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it fails. I've had many friends go through losing it all, and I hate that. That's a bad thing to say, but economies change and go through different things. And yeah, you could be on top now, but 5 years ago you might be gone. But that's also to say that you can't come back from that. I had a friend that went bankrupt twice, and all of a sudden is now doing well in their life. But they didn't listen, and they realized that about the stuff. They took things the wrong way. They did bad investments and this and that. But that's just to tell people it's okay if you fail. It's just how you learn from that failure, not to make the same mistake, and then pick yourself up to do better, to build that life more better for yourself. Because I think I want to just stress at people like it's okay to fail. That's how our country was built, on failure. You hate to admit that, but it has been built on that. Like we have failed, we have tried, we get back up, we strive again, and we move forward. And so I always tell people if you don't get something, it's okay, but don't give up on it. If it's something you really care about, something you want to learn, you want to grow with, you got to keep trying, you know? And that's been something that's been very helpful for me in my career and where I've been at to be able to just to do that. But it takes a little bit of pride in that because I think when you fail, you feel like you just can't get yourself back up, you know? And I guess goes into our next topic where you talk about the power of personal branding, because I think that's so important because you really have to be your own advocate, you know? So in your words, tell us the power of personal branding. How important is that? And what are the tools that someone would need to really be good at that or to promote to themselves, ideally?
Yeah, when I reflect back on my career and some of the things that I like attribute success to, resilience is one. And by the way, sort of some of the steps that I refer to for healthy resilience, one of them is permission to fail, to sort of your last point. Another one of those is personal brand. And I think I don't think I had the vernacular 20 something years ago when I actually I look back now, I was actually focused on building my own personal brand. It's when I made the move from banking into the world of business to business and professional services. And I started to lead commercial teams, which had been new for me because I had been primarily on the operations side before. And so everyone I think understands the importance of the brand of the company, but recognize people do business with people they like and trust and therefore want to do business with. So I was working for my team and myself to start to differentiate ourselves. And so I've been working at it for a very, very long time. But where I see many people, and it's come so much to the forefront over the last number of years as things like LinkedIn talks about its social selling index, not the way we think about influencers in terms of Instagram and TikTok and how many, views and followings you have on there. But in the business world, it really is, about the individual that you're going to be working with. Do you trust from them? And in my role, I've spent a lot of years leading management consulting, technology, and outsourcing businesses. And certainly on the consulting side, you are literally buying the people. That's who you're contracting certain people to, because of their expertise, to come in and do something for your company. And so I see where people are falling down. So I believe there's 4 key elements to personal brand, and where people stop and then fall is they only do the first thing. Like, what do I do? What did I go to school for? What is the industry that I've worked in? So that's their subject matter expertise. But we're more than that. We are whole humans who show up. And so our brand needs to be much more reflective of all of the aspects of who we are. So the next part beyond what we do, our subject matter expertise, is like, who are you as a human? What makes you you? So that can be sharing certain stories or lived experiences. It can be talking about the things that you value, the passions or interests that you have. Those build connection with people. That initial hook to, open the door to start a conversation. The next part is around differentiation or, your unique value proposition. What makes you unique and different than others? Because there's going to be people who have the same amount of experience or maybe even more. So what makes you different from others and stand out? That also means understanding the audience, though, and what they're seeking. And so you should also not try to be all things to all people. And the last part in brand, and this is one that will very much evolve and change over time. And my older son, who when he was coming out of college, I was like, buddy, you got to get a LinkedIn profile and you got to start building your brand. And he's like, Mom, only old people are on LinkedIn. I'm like, well, dude, old people like me are the people who are hiring you. So let's do this. Legacy and impact. What do you want to be known for? I don't expect when I think I was telling my son this, he was 22 at the time. I don't expect, when you die, what are people going to say at your eulogy? You're not thinking about it at that point. But I encourage people to always be thinking much more broadly, like how, and even if for now it's a rapper, how do you want to be known? You asked me for my elevator pitch. Well, so I wouldn't want people to talk about the fact that solely that about all that I've done in business, the sales or revenue that I've driven, profitability for businesses. I want it to be about the fact that I left the workplaces, the community, and the world at large a better place when I left it than when I came into it. And that is through being an authentic leader, building real relationships with people, being focused around social justice and equity, and other things, raising two really good humans. You need to build a brand that's based on this broader foundation of all of these elements, just versus that first one.
Wow. No, that's very great. And I totally agree with you on that. The last one's always a doozy. I'm in my 40s and I still don't know that. No. I mean, I think you're always going to be reinventing yourself and coming ways to that. But yeah, it's so true, because I think I used to remember when the interviews probably the last couple of years, and I just kept wondering. And I had one great interview with this company I used to work for. And they said, "What is your carbon footprint, and what do you want to leave behind?" And I said, "Wow, I never anyone ever asked me that." Because they were a very, small financial consulting firm, and they were all about helping businesses and growth. And I think I respected that so much, because that is kind of important. What are you going to leave behind? You're doing all this hard work, but what are you really doing it for? Just to make money? You should be Jeff Bezos and do that. I don't know if anyone likes him, but but it's like, but what are you doing with it? Are you helping grow something? Are you helping people progress? Are you finding ways to include, diversity and inclusion in places? Like, what is it that you're adding to the value? And I think that's so great. I mean, listen, I used to work for Disney, and I can say that, but ideally it's all about family and branding. Now, are they the perfect company? No, but there is an image and a legacy that's behind, that you still see to this day. And that's what it still holds true to, not to be the most perfect way they're doing it, but ideally still making the money and they're still making it happen, So when I was working in entertainment, that was one of the things that I always thought about. It's like, we're creating these contests, we're creating ideas, we're creating platforms and shows and TV, but are we really doing it to really bring a wide audience to everyone? And nowadays that's happening, but was that the case back then? No. So I think ideally those things and those projects I was a part of felt more important to me, because it was like, we're including more people who are part of the LGBTQ plus A community. We're taking more people who are of different backgrounds, whether it be Black, Asian, Native American. Like, we're doing things that are actually representing what America is, and those are some of the things that I thought back. I was like, wow, those are great things to be a part of in projects, to see that and to see that growth, because that legacy you leave is the legacy you want someone else to pick up behind you and either continue going on with or transform to something even better. I think that's how you have to really look at it in a way. So that's really good. And speaking of that, for you, what do you think is the importance of diversity and inclusion in companies today? We talked a little about it earlier, but I just want to hear your opinion on how you feel that's so important and how we really should be driving this home, in a corporate America.
Yeah, I wish more people recognized instead of that it's just like a tick in the box, that how instrumental it is in actually driving business results. It's not just good for the employees, it's good for business. And so I'm saddened. It's one of the things I don't love about Florida and some of our politics, like seeing, the country as a whole, repealing affirmative action and other things as we talk about just equity and justice, period. But here I've seen our governor has eliminated DEI leadership roles, within, Florida state, owned agencies, universities, whatever. So that disappoints me. I do not believe that the chief diversity officer or someone else, accountable with that, they're not responsible for it. I think all leaders and all, within the business are responsible for, hiring and creating more diversity, creating opportunities for others.
Sure.
But you do have a person who can report on the metrics, where we are, who is an expert, who can help identify blind spot, unconscious bias, whatever. So I want people to do it, not just because it's like the right thing to do, but
Hmm.
just like embrace it because it's it's good for like businesses, it's good for community, it's good for the individuals
Yeah.
as well. And so I came to this, you know, doing it 20 plus years ago before we were really talking about like DEI and having business or employee resource groups. It was because I felt like I was the only or one of few being a woman, being queer, being so young at the time as an
Right.
executive. But I also started to lead like really diverse teams. I ran like outsourcing companies where you know, think like technical support, customer service, maybe some telemarketing. Like that's not always the most desired job. So it's
Sure.
unemployed, underemployed, or new immigrants to the country was like a vast majority of who was there. And so they're high turnover. So how do I create an environment where people feel more engaged and maybe I can get them to stay a little bit longer? And
Hmm.
so that's
Hmm.
so for me where I was, you know, doing it. And but it's just I'll continue to, you know, do it because I actually do believe it's the right thing on a whole bunch of fronts. But we need to be strategically intentional about that. So understand where we're starting from. Like it saddens me when you look at the Fortune 500, you've got less than 10%. And I think it just dropped to under 10% or hovering around there. You know, women, female CEOs, there are only
Yeah.
six Black CEOs. You look at venture capital funding going to like founders, like around 2% go to women, a fraction go again to Black founders. Like there's something fundamentally wrong. So
Yeah.
that's, we need to be intentional about, we can't just hope that the needle is going to move. Like we need to
No.
take action and with intention in terms of how we're going to, you know, progress.
And I think that comes down a lot to we have to broaden our level of education and scope and start really looking at where we're pulling our talents from. You know, one of the things I thought was really great about my company is that they have a amazing pool of diverse interns who go on to actually work for the company because they do such an amazing job, but they pull from historically Black colleges. They pull from places that we don't normally have. Yes, you have your Georgetowns, you have your Ivy Leagues, you know, but I think that's kind of where it needs to really start as well too, because school is kind of one of the foundations where you get to have so many backgrounds. I mean, I went to NYU, and ideally you had every culture in the world there, you know, but it was a great place to learn that and to see that. And so seeing these people come in and seeing, you know, the different diversities that happen and the education you learn. And that's what you said earlier, you know, you're buying a person, not a company. You know, if this person's representing your company, they see themselves reflected in that. And so it makes them more wanting to work with your company because like, oh, I see someone like me. Oh, I see this person here. And it's not, you know, it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel, all right, it's diversion week. This guys, we hired one Black person. We did great. Congratulations. It's like, oh, no, that's not how that works. But ideally, it's more of like, what can we do? And they started, at least at my company, we started doing a lot of cultural representations in certain groups when it comes to like we have Black History Month, we have Cinco de Mayo. They talk about all the different things in different cultures, and really express that and open your eyes to that to understand that different level. They really treat women. I mean, our women, our CEO is a woman, and so she's really keen on like women diversity and really just having that power and seeing women in these higher parts of our organization has been in all inspiring to see that because and to see the collaboration they have going through and just the smarts they have, you're just like, wow, that's amazing. Because you didn't see that. Like I said, you didn't see that a lot back in the day. That was not a thing, especially when you work in finance and private equity and, you know, venture capitalists. That was not a thing. Nowadays, it doesn't even matter. And the age range has been really interesting too, you know, because these kids are, God, so smart today and they just learn so much. And it's like to see what they bring to the table. I think it's so great because it was an old, boring, stuffy white man job for so many years. Nowadays, it's just everyone, and everyone brings something different to the table, and you have a collective group that's just always engaging and learning, and not seeing that ageism, which I think is still a thing. You know, so it does happen a lot in companies. To not see that has been a huge refresher to do that. And you know, we believe in a hybrid work environment, which we are technically a European country based in Australia, but it's more of like I think more American companies would do so great in having that and understanding that flexibility. Because I think if you do your job, and this with a whole argument this my friends about hybrid versus like 9 to 5 in the office every day. The traditional way of coming to the office is just a thing that doesn't happen. COVID obviously changed that for a lot of us, but ideally, I think a hybrid situation is the best. You save money, you save resources, you're still getting your work done. And your people's morale has gone up. I have probably gone up a lot more than they had before. I mean, you try to see people go back to the office 5 days a week, and you see the amounts of frowns on people's faces that have to do that. Now, some people love that, and there's a market for that, and I think that's great. But as we look at some of the generations that are coming in, that hybrid workspace is the way to go. And ideally, you see good results in that developing as long as you're. I mean, because the thing is, like, you as a leader, it's like you have deliverables. You know what you need to do. You know how to get your project done. You know what you need to get, done, how to make it happen. Okay, then why don't you be in the office 5 days a week to do that? If you know I'm doing my job, you know I'm getting stuff done. Now, if I'm slacking and like stuff's not happening, projects are dropping, of course, that's a different issue. But if you're bringing deliverables and you're exceeding your goals, I think working 2 days from home is not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not even a client-facing role. Now, if you're seeing clients every day, that's one thing. But if you're not in a client-facing role, like, come on, the stuffiness, we got to get out of it. We got to really change it up. And I hope corporate America gets a lot better about that, because it's just like, it's not a thing. You're going to lose a lot of people. I personally think, I could be wrong with my statistics, but I do think, like, I could imagine working in an office every day, 5 days a week. Maybe back in the day before COVID, sure. I probably hated it though. I didn't think I needed to be in every day. But now, I don't think I could ever go back to that. Like, if Victoria Job was like, I'll pay you so and so money, 5 days a week in the office, I'd be like, no. It's my own mental stability. It's just how I feel. It's how I work. And it's like, I could not function very well to do that. And I would be very depressed. But then again, that's just me.
Yeah, I think we need to give flexibility for sure. I'm a proponent of a hybrid environment. I do think that there's significant collaboration and innovation that happens when people are together.
Of course.
And not Zoom together, right? Like together in person with one another.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it has to be 5 days a week. I look at financial services has been one of the leaders pushing for this full return to the office. Yet I actually happen to know there's a lot of pressure from government and local, like particularly in cities, to bring that together. And so, like, I understand the attempt to do it. So I think, why can't we land on a great hybrid solution that creates flexibility, demonstrates trust in our employees, et cetera, versus demanding a return to the office. Sadly, I do think there are a few companies who've done the forced return to office to weed people out right now to reduce their workforce, because many of them are saying, if you don't return to the office, then like basically you're resigning your position.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening as well too. But I think if a company really wants to grow themselves, they got to at least get better about that. I think some companies are, but it's always going to be a balance. And it's funny, I work in financial services, and my company's of one company. So it's like, yeah, we want to return one to the office, but we do understand that flexibility is important too, and as I said, they let us work remotely where we need to work. I'm a component of, like, as long as you get your projects done, you get everything together, I don't think it's a problem. But I do like the fact of, like, during a midweek, we all get together and we're in the office and we're celebrating, we're seeing one another. It's a balance, I still love the water cooler moments. You get to the office, you talk, we gab, and, you catch up on the latest show. Love that. But once again, I don't need to be in the office 5 days to do that. That's just something I don't think you need to do, but a few days, 100%. I think it's totally great. I think it's a good balance, because if I had to be home, which I did at one of my jobs, I kind of just went insane, because you didn't have much, but it was just right after COVID. But it was nice to see people outside of, you work with, outside of I think the Zoom fatigue that you used to have. It's just like, oh God, I had to look at you another Zoom meeting. You know what I mean? So I do love that counterbalance. It's been such a great experience to be able to have that. And I hope more companies do that, I do, as we move forward, in the future. So Victoria, where can people find out more about you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? LinkedIn, obviously you have. I know you do.
Yes. Well, just to prove a point that I've worked really hard at building my brand, I could just say Google me, because I'm everywhere. However, to make it really easy, I do have a website. It's victoria-peltier.com. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, so people don't need to figure out how to spell the last name. And
Perfect.
from there, I've got the links out to all the other platforms if people want to connect with me on those.
Perfect. Awesome. And you said the book that you have, your new book, you said have come out, you said this summer or fall?
Yeah,
You're
so I
working
have
on it?
3 books I've written. The first was a co-authored book that came out many years ago. That's the title of
Okay.
like my life's philosophy called Unstoppable.
Okay.
I wrote a book on personal branding called Influence Unleashed, and it came out in January. You can
Nice.
find it on my website, find it on Amazon, whatever. And then the newest one is on leadership and culture, and that one is called the Power of Whole Human Leadership, and that one will come out this summer.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. It sounds very great. Victoria, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience and your background and doing what you've done. I think you've left a good carbon footprint in our world, and I hope we have more people like you in the future. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.